Hello and welcome to The Print. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan, Deputy Editor, and we have with us, I'm joined with my colleague Saurav Roy Burman. And of course, we are interviewing Dr. Subhash Chandra Garg, who's a former finance secretary and who has worked with three finance ministers. He's an author and he can lend us a lot of insight into India's economic policy and on tricky issues like electoral bond, which is, of course, the news of the day. So thank you so much, Dr. Garg, for joining us.
Thank you, Sharad. Thank you very much.
From the electoral bonds issue, as Sharad pointed out. Sir, today, in an opinion piece, you have argued that, commenting on the Supreme Court judgment, you said it was essentially the triumph of idealism over pragmatism. So why do you hold that view?
So, what is idealism? The ideal is that you conceive a certain kind of construct which is completely transparent, completely sort of electoral battle friendly, voter friendly, where information asymmetry is not there. That is the ideal world, right? The elections are expensive affairs. Political parties need a lot of money. Political candidates need a lot of money to contest elections. And therefore, a system which is transparent enough and provides all the information that which company provided how much contribution to which political party or the candidate is an ideal system. That system was there in our legal system. The companies law before the electoral bonds came in, or the laws were amended in 2017, provided a very transparent and clear system that only the profit-making companies can make contributions for political purposes. There was a Maryada or the limit of 7.5% of the average profits for the last 3 years. That is what you can give maximum in terms of political contributions, ensuring that you are not getting carried away or you're not inculcating political parties too much. And there was also a requirement that all the contributions you make, whichever party, whatever amount you do, you would disclose that into your accounts and profit and loss accounts. So that was the ideal world. But the ideal world did not have anyone making actually the contributions. The system was there, transparent, clear, but hardly anybody was used. I understand the data before 2016-17, on an average, only about 250 odd crores worth of political contributions were made in India, grossly inadequate. That is what brings me to the pragmatism aspect. The political parties before 2017-18 used to receive bulk of the political contributions in pure cash, unaccounted cash. The legal requirement was that if you make contribution of 20,000 or more, you still give it in writing. The political party will have to give you a receipt and disclose it to the Election Commission of India that so many people have given us and so much contribution has come up before of over 20,000 rupees each. But lesser than 20,000, you don't have to disclose. You don't have to even account for. So the system developed that most of the political parties would receive in unaccounted cash and carry out their operations by using that cash outside the accounts. So that was the practical situation, pragmatic situation. The electoral bonds tried to make the situation somewhat better. So it was a compromise between the idealistic world of non-operating corporate fully disclosed contribution to the bad world of cash unaccounted contribution. What it said was that, all right, we may not aim at the full transparency, but we let us get as much accounting of bring it on the accounts and bring as much transparency as possible. So the system made this beautiful compromise, in my judgment, that the companies will buy the bonds only by using its KYC cleared bank account, so that there is no black money involved. Only the fully accounted money is involved. And it would make contribution to the political parties without disclosing to whom they are giving. But as far as their political contribution is concerned, this was to be disclosed fully in terms of how much amount in all they have used for that particular year. The aspect of prudence the companies would take care. Companies are in the business of running businesses. They would not sort of donate so much that they would turn their profitability into loss making. In fact, the whole purpose of making political contribution is to keep their companies healthy and profitable. That was the reason. Otherwise, they wouldn't. And similarly, the political parties, the transparency was that they would get the entire funding through the EBs in their bank accounts and deposit in the SBI and get the credits done in their bank accounts, and then use this accounted for money for making its expenses. So I think this compromise brought enough transparency and complete accounting of the political contribution. To that extent, the idealism was sort of tempered by the pragmatism. Now, this judgment reverts the entire thing to the pre-EB days, and therefore you get back the idealism of pre-2017, but the pragmatism of 2017 later, EBs goes out of the window. So that is why I said it is triumph of idealism over pragmatism. Is that idealism beautiful, more transparent, more functional? Are the questions we should be asking? Or the pragmatic system being sort of discontinued, is India better off in terms of the political disclosures or the contributions or using the accounted money? That's where my sort of expression I used meant.
I mean, so the essential argument that you're making is, this would have helped curb black money, which is also the argument that the government has been making from the very beginning. But, the court in its judgment pointed out that there were other available options in the form of, bank transfer or even electoral trust. I mean, the court has specifically held up electoral trust as the suitable option, which could have been used, instead of bringing this scheme or cloak of anonymity. Why do you think the system of electoral trusts? Why do you think that was not feasible in helping, tackle black money, use of black money in funding polls?
So the electoral trust system existed before the electoral bonds came in. The companies could have either directly made the political contribution and disclose in their own accounts, or make a contribution to an electoral trust, and then the electoral trust would disclose to whom or to which political party they have given. Right. So this is not a new suggestion.
No.
This is not a new system.
It said it was already there, so they could have.
So it was there for many years. It was for many years it existed, but it was not used, or it was used sparingly. Only a couple of companies used it, electoral trust. So the question to be asked is not from me, but I think the court should answer that why was this system not used?
Right.
And if the fact is that the system was not used, should we be asking or expecting that the same system used earlier would be used now. If you want my take on why the electoral trust system or the direct company disclosed donations were not working, it is, to my mind, it is because of the fact that in India, the political donations are not made for any charitable or pious or promoting democracy kind of notions. These are hardcore quid pro quo business purpose. Somebody has to thank someone for getting its bills passed or its returns accepted or licenses granted, or somebody has to sort of curry favor by sort of changing the rules of games or otherwise for getting the contract turned towards itself and things like that, or pure protection that don't needle me too much, don't trouble me too much, right? That kind of, these are the reasons for which the businesses buy peace with the politicians which are ruling. The fact that the electoral bonds also primarily went towards the ruling parties. In fact, if you look at the data, the pre-2017 contribution through this transparent trust otherwise route, in 3 or 4 years before that, BJP actually had received much more, about 80-85% of the funding than what it has received through the EBs. EBs is about 57-58% is what they have received. Why is this system of EBs politically fair in the sense that it has not gone, all the money has not gone to the ruling parties, which also have, incidentally, at its disposal many of the investigative agencies, right? The fact that it's an ideal arrangement, but not a practical arrangement, and it doesn't serve the business needs. It doesn't answer that. If we are not prepared to accept that business logic or the fact of the life, then of course we can always hope for the best in the ideal world.
So I would like to bring in what Justice Sanjeev Khanna in his concurring judgment pointed out, that the total unknown income, which is basically donations under rupees 20,000, has not shown any signs of ebbing, and has substantially grown, from 2,500 crore from 2014-15 to 8,400 crore by 2021-22. So why do you think that happened, even after the introduction of EVs?
See, my sense is that the total expenditure on political activities is much larger than what the electoral bonds also serviced, right? You have anecdotal evidence of some candidates spending hundreds of crores in one Lok Sabha elections or one, right? No one has a full account of how much, or even an estimate of how much funds are actually spent in elections in India. The election commission ceilings are only satisfied on paper. There is hardly anyone will accept that the actual expenditure is anywhere close to what the election ceilings are. And therefore, if the political expenditure on elections is much larger, then it is fair to accept that even the cash donations would increase. What, in my judgment, one should look at it is that this is a fact that 16,000 crores plus of the funds came through the electoral bonds. The question to be asked is that if these electoral bonds were not there, these 16,000 crores might as well have gone through the cash route.
Right.
It is not that the businesses would stop asking for the political favors from the ruling parties, because those are their real business needs. And therefore, they are, if they have a route for providing through the electoral bonds, keeping the expenditures on their accounts and the profit and loss account and balance sheet or whatever, they opt for this scheme. If they don't have this, so what Justice Sanjeev Mehta said, if the electoral bonds are not there, in my judgment, that 8,000 crores of cash might as well have been 20,000 crores of cash.
Right. So I have one more question on how. So you have argued in the past also that the feature of anonymity is the basics is forms the basic structure of the EB scheme.
Absolutely.
That fact has also been recognized by the court, which is why when it struck down that component, the entire scheme has automatically been struck down.
Exactly.
But the court has pointed out that information about funding to a party is essential for a voter to exercise his freedom to vote. So what do you think of that argument?
Yes, it is essential. It is good. It should be helpful. I don't know whether the common voter cares too much about which party, but of course the political commentators, the analysts care about it. And if that information is available, that's definitely very helpful. But that information, if it is not available, or it leads to the whole electoral bond scheme to collapse, and you get converted into the cash system where also you don't have the information by then. So it then doesn't lead to what outcome is desired. That is where I think the balance between the pragmatism and the idealism need to be struck.
What was the central idea behind extending this cloak of anonymity to donors?
This is precisely what it is. That the corporates were not interested to tell which party they are giving how much, because there was a fear of retribution. Things may change. There might be agencies set upon each other for the funding to the opponents and things like that. And therefore, if they were assured that, all right, this information no one will have. There are arguments people have made that no, it's available in the SBI, the ruling party could have taken it, right? But the fact that only 57% of the contribution has gone to them, I would like to believe that they did not use the information available with SBI, or even if they did not ask the information from the SBI, or even if they asked, they did not use. Otherwise, this 57% should have been 80%. So this central idea of anonymity was critical for the corporates to feel comfortable that yes, we can make the political contributions without sort of getting smashed in the process by the political opponents or otherwise. That was the central feature. And if that central feature goes, you can today envisage that you can bring an electoral bond scheme which would also require the information which was earlier required by before 2017, that you would disclose to whom you have given how much in the company accounts. Likewise, the political parties would disclose that how much has been received in the EBs from which corporate, and this information becomes transparently available. That would be the ideal world. But will contributions come through the EBs of that nature? That is the question to ask. I suspect in the kind of situation we are in the country, this would meet the same fate as what the scheme which was earlier sort of had met the fact.
But you would say that it is not technically incorrect to say that the government always had the option to check the identity of the donors, especially particularly those donating to the opposition parties through SBI?
The scheme was designed in a in a way where this information was not even supposed to be generated by the SBI. There was a Chinese wall between the two wings of the SBI. One wing was issuing the EBs after sort of doing the KYC to the person. And there was another wing which used to receive it from and deposit it into the bank account. The EBs, the information about a particular EB issued to a particular corporate and deposited by a particular party was never prepared, was never meant to be prepared by the SBI. You see, this is usually not taken into account. The EBs don't have any transparently or visible number on it. So you don't actually know which EB is coming from which corporate and which is being deposited by which party. And even the directions which the Supreme Court has issued now will not lead to this information being immediately available.
So it won't be possible for the Election Commission of India to furnish those details by March?
I'm not saying possible. I'm saying it will not be immediately available. What would come on the website on or before 13th of March is that there would be an information that these corporates purchase these EBs of these denominations, right? So let us say a particular corporate purchased 100 EBs of 1 crore denomination. So 100 crore was given. So that information would come from the other route. The parties will tell that we received the EBs of 100 crore on this and this day, right? Now, this may match if there is only 1-to-1 kind of transactions, but the dates will not match because the date of issue and the date of receipt of the EB by the political party is not same. And the information on both sides don't carry the specific EB number. And therefore, in the first instance, you would have information about corporates that all these 16,000 odd crores have come from, let us say, these X number of corporates of this much amount each. That information would come. Simultaneously, you would also have information that these political parties received these much EBs on this day, date-wise, and cash them. The political party's statement will not have that which EB was received from which corporate, and the corporate side statement given by the SBI will not have that which one was given to which political party. And that information may in due course, by people doing data analytics and otherwise, can be inferred or guesstimated or estimated, whichever way you would like to take it. And in due course, maybe there would be nice matches to do. But in the first instance, this information will not be available.
Okay. So now, keeping to the political tone of this interview, but also bringing it a little bit to the economy and to your role as the finance secretary. Now, the whole debate of one nation, one election started around the time when you were in the finance ministry. So, keeping the politics aside here, did you look into the fiscal impact of having one nation, one election, and how that would compare to the current system? Because there are some estimates that are coming right now saying that the cost differential is actually not that much. So from just the purely money part of things, did you have a look at the implications?
Sharad, during my time, this question was not examined by the Department of Economic Affairs at all.
Okay.
So I did not have any official occasion to examine this. even otherwise, the cost issues are more handled by the Department of Expenditure, not by the Department of Economic Affairs. But certainly, as a concerned citizen, in the government, and after I left the government in 2019, one will always think about these aspects, right? So I'll give you my take on what it is.
Sure.
My sense is that the constitutionally in India, the simultaneous single election of the Lok Sabha and the Vidhan Sabha is neither feasible nor desirable.
Okay.
Why feasibility? Because while there is a 5-year tenure of both the Lok Sabha and the Vidhan Sabha, today they run from different dates.
Right.
Bringing them to a single date will require lots of adjustments. Certain assemblies will have to be curtailed, their tenures shortened, etc., which is not permissible in the constitution. And how that would be possible is something, to my mind, an administratively a nightmare. Secondly, the constitution permits the assemblies to be dissolved before their 5-year term. For different reasons. The central government can dissolve the assemblies if there is a breakdown of the constitutional machinery, 356, 359, etc. Likewise, the political parties in the states also can decide to hold the elections before their due dates. Right. You can't take away this freedom from the political parties, and you can't make the central government dysfunctional if there is a constitutional breakdown, and then you dismiss the assembly, which will introduce in an element of the disassociation between the 5-year simultaneous election principles. So these are the two technical reasons. Desirability, as you mentioned, from the cost point of view, cannot really be much either, right? Even if you hold simultaneous elections, like what happens in Andhra Pradesh and some other states, the elections are simultaneously, you may not hold it on the same day, or even if you hold it, you will have to make the polling arrangement, official arrangements separately for the two elections. It is not that the same party gets the voting done for the two elections. Right. That is not permissible, not desirable, too much of mixing. So cost, in any case, the cost of elections the formal cost of election is not too high, and the non-formal cost of elections, which the candidates and the parties incur, are unlikely to be reduced, because every candidate, whether for Lok Sabha or Vidhan Sabha, has to watch for itself rather than. So I don't think from the cost point of view, also it is likely to be anything better. I have one more argument to make. In fact, that perhaps to my mind might be a better way to go forward. In the United States of America, as you know, the elections are held in two steps or two frames, the 2-year kind of thing. In our case, Rajya Sabha also, we have elections in 3 installments, 2 years each, for the Rajya Sabha 6-year terms. So while it is convenient, definitely, to hold the two elections together, and it's also administratively desirable in the sense that you don't have to put the official machinery into model code of conduct every now and then and do all these kind of things. And so therefore, if we can move towards a system of elections twice in 5 years, one along with Lok Sabha and another 2.5 years later.
Like a midterm.
That it's not midterm, but you converge many assemblies, elections holding around 2.5 years after the Lok Sabha elections. So if you have this kind of system where the two convergences come rather than the 15 kind of times of elections which we have in the country today, that would meet the goal half the way or maybe more than half the way rather than doing it. And that would also not be as disruptive on the constitutional system. If someone wants to have an election 1 year before the mid election or the second elections, you can have take that elections along with. So I think that might be a better way to go forward rather than a simultaneous election.
Right. And so now sticking to this the center state kind of relationship, and you're the perfect person to actually tell us this, the devolution issue, especially amongst the southern states versus the center, it's become a little confusing where the southern states are saying that we have received this amount, the center is saying that we have transferred some other amount, and there seems to be a difference here. Number one, where is this difference coming from? And two, to put it quite frankly, the layperson, whose number should they go by?
So, Sharad, I wrote a piece today in ThePrint exactly on the same subject. I would suggest you have a look at it. I'll just broadly summarize the conclusions which I sort of stated in that. There are three axes of fiscal federal relationships. One is the tax axis, where the central taxes are shared between the center and the states. The other one is the grants axis, where central government provides lots of grants, centrally sponsored schemes, and other to the states. And the third one is the role of the central government in permitting the loans to be raised by the states. These are the three broad, big sort of axes on which the country's fiscal federal system rests.
Right.
On the taxes side, there are two major developments which have taken place, which impact what Karnataka was demonstrating here. One is that in the first leg, how much of the central taxes should be transferred to the state is decided, right? So that is the 14th Finance Commission said it should be 42%. It was earlier 32%. It was raised massively. Currently, it is 41% because J&K is not an estate; it's a UT. So, but otherwise, it is the same 42%. Now, the government of India wasn't very comfortable accepting massive uptake on the state's share in the central taxes. It did accept the recommendation, but it has used is one major loophole which is constitutionally permissible, that cesses and surcharges are not part of the divisible pool, and it has over the years expanded the cesses and surcharges very highly. The excise duty on petroleum products is the case in point. You would be surprised unless you have already seen. Not even 5% of the excise duty on petroleum products is in shareable pool these days.
Right. Yes.
Right. So that is the way they have reduced that 42% to effectively 32%, though it was never 42%. Maximum was say 37, 38%. But there is a 5% clear clawback by creative or extensive use of. But this doesn't affect Karnataka directly. It affects all the states together. The Karnataka, for some reason, we will need to go into much more detail, that the 15th Finance Commission reduced Karnataka's share too drastically from somewhere close to 4.6%, 7% to 3.8% or something.
Right.
Other southern states, which have also done well on development, industrialization, population control, did not get this kind of X or reduction. Tamil Nadu, for example, Kerala did not suffer. Why did Karnataka suffer this kind of thing? We'll need to go into more of details. But for this, you can't blame the central government. The central government would not have asked the Finance Commission to do some hanky-panky to reduce the. Obviously, the factors which go into it, or the data provided, had some effect in making Karnataka's case that much, or it suffered that much.
But the thing is, right, sorry, but the thing is that the Finance Commission also, during its term, has extensive consultations with each of the states. So it would have got a lot of information from Karnataka as well.
That's what it is. So what happens is that at this stage of consultation, you are not telling what recommendation you want to make, right?
Right.
Recommendations are derived based on the information, data, consultations held earlier. So the determination of a state's particular share is at the end, and that is not disclosed at all to the state concerned. So was it because of some error, or something was not taken into account, or was it because the state had improved the poverty and other, which are the factors which go so brilliantly and brightly that even compared to the other southern states, it suffered much more. That is something which is a matter of details, because I find this completely anomalous. Why was Karnataka's share? Incidentally, if you go more into it, from 13th to 14th, Karnataka's share actually went up.
It went up, correct, yes.
Right. So if Karnataka's share went up from 13 to 14, and in 2015, its share was practically same as year 2000 for 15, 20 years. 15 years it was same. Why did it suddenly go down so much? That need to be investigated, right?
Okay. And now the other thing where the center and states seem to be again fighting is to do with GST. Now that the compensation the compensation payments to the states has stopped, a lot of states are saying that our GST revenue is not high enough and that we are suffering. So in your estimation, does this mean that the GST rates need to be reviewed, or how much is being shared with the states needs to be reviewed? Or does the work need to be done by the states to fix their finances?
I don't think this is factually correct, that the states' GST revenues have not increased. In fact, they are having best of the times in the GST increase terms. You should ask the question, whichever state raises this, that the dynamic increase, 14% was built in as per the old formula.
Right.
My sense is that their increase is more than 14%. In fact, it's the center which is experiencing lesser increase in GST. What the number you see is the aggregate, but you don't see the number of the central government. That is at 11 and 11.5% increase. States increase is much more. What, in my judgment, the states are trying, and they have their eyes on, is the fact that the GST compensation, which is still being collected, which was extended up to 2026,
right,
is in surplus. Right. It is much more than what the requirement of even paying off the loans which were taken by the central government to provide that accommodation of the GST shortfall prior to 2022.
Then the cess can stop.
Correct. So either the cess can stop, or this cess which is collected can be shared with the states.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. This is what I think they're aiming at. This year, if you look at the financial accounts of the government of India, the no repayment was due, or very small repayment of the loans taken for the GST purposes, GST compensation purposes was due. So they have something close to 1,70,000 crores or 1,60,000 crores, which they have transferred to the GST fund, and that they have used for retiring or buying back their securities, because so center is taking benefit of the cash which is available over and above. So I think the states perhaps are eyeing at getting this, and that's a legitimate thing. That's not illegitimate. If you have excess GST compensation cess, that doesn't belong to the center. That belongs to at best both of them together. Like you share IGST, you share the GST compensation cesses.
Absolutely. And now, so my final question is that economists like even Subramanian Swamy have argued that the current post-pandemic high growth that we are seeing is actually because the recovery period is being included in this high growth. And of course, the recovery period would see high growth because it was coming after contraction. But if you compare the normal years of 2019-20 and 2022-23, then the growth rates actually are about 4% or less than that. So is that...
So you now the fifth year of the Modi government, second Modi government is getting over, and we now have data. Of course, the advance estimates for 23-24 will probably be reduced a bit. These are a little more optimistic, but that's not a major factor. So you have now the numbers for 5 years.
Right.
What is the 5 years growth for the Modi second government? It is about 4%, 4.1, 4.2% is the final number. Now, if you take that 5-year horizon, then the effect of the later 3 years, either as a bump off from the contraction of 2021, then it gets neutralized, and so right. The 4% growth is not something to write home about or to crow about.
Right, absolutely. So basically, you're saying if you compare the 2023-24 growth or GDP number versus the 2019-20, the growth over that period.
18-19 one can take, because 18-19 was the last year of the first. Right. So the 5-yearly period, this would be one of the lowest growth period in India's post-1991 reform history.
Wow. Okay. But on that very optimistic note, thank you so much for your time.
Very small question.
Oh, sorry.
So, as someone who's worked very closely with this government until recently, so would you like to hazard a guess on how do you think the government is planning to overturn this Supreme Court judgment or negate this judgment somehow? And do you think that should
it's difficult to figure out. What I see, there are two issues. The pragmatic EBs versus idealistic EBs, and second, this sort of unfair deal to the corporates for being asked to disclose the past information. These, to my mind, are the issues. I don't know anything because I am not in contact with the people in government. But I would strongly recommend that the second issue is something which is taken care of. I think this will have far more disruptive effect. Even otherwise, if the statute has given you a certain kind of guarantee, sort of rescinding it retrospectively perhaps is a little unfair. How do you deal with the pragmatic EBs versus idealistic EBs? The government may choose to go for the idealistic EBs and expose it for everyone that work. So I have no idea about the government's thinking, but I see these two potential issues which the government may decide to deal with or not to deal with.
So thank you so much, Dr. Garg, for joining us. This was a fascinating conversation. As
I'm not, by the way, a doctor, but many people describe me, so I take it as a compliment.
And Mr. Garg, thank you so much.
All right, Sharad and Saurav. All the best to you guys. Thank you.